you all. It's like, wow.
Yeah.
Well, it's good to be here. Really. So it'll be a little shift. I'd like to, this Canticle of Creation, I was thinking as we just celebrated, how many of you went to the Easter Vigil, which is Saturday night? Wow, great, awesome. Well, then you remember that the very first reading of the many readings, which is really the reading of our salvation history, began with
Genesis.
Genesis, began with creation. And so I was thinking as we begin, here we are on the whole, this is really Easter week. So during Easter week then, I thought it'd be good to start here. And since the topic tonight is caring for God's creation, I just wanted to begin here and look at the revelations of God about who we are. And so let's do it this way. How about if we start over here, way over in the back? I'm terrible with names, so I know your faces, but I don't know names. I can't remember names. If we could start with you, and if each person just go right along and back and forth in this right here, and just read the line, you know, the phrase. There's two lines there. Whatever's the two lines, whatever. You'll be able to, where there's a period, stop. Okay?
Yeah.
And this Canticle of Creation, so many times in the I believe in God, our creed, we say, I believe in God, the Father Almighty, creator of heaven and earth, and in Jesus Christ. Well, what this does is it kind of expands. I believe in God who created the creator of heaven and earth. It expands this. And moves us right into the person of Jesus, who brings us to the fullness of who we are and who God is. So let us just take a moment to take a little breath. Just remember that the Jewish people believe, as we do, that our breath is God's breath and God's life within us. So God's presence. So let's just take a moment to take 3 deep breaths and think of breathing in God's love. And as we exhale, think of sending that peace out to the world around us. So let us begin our prayer in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit.
Amen.
In the beginning, Lord God, you alone existed, eternally one, yet pregnant in fullness of unity, full to the overflowing. You, Father of all life, exploded outward in a billion bits and pieces. Your words became flesh.
Whirling and shining stars, shimmering suns, in Genesis, glimmering galaxies.
You, my God, spoke, and your words became flesh. In sun and moon, earth and seas, mountains and gentle hills, rolling rivers and silent streams.
You, my God, spoke, and your words became flesh, in winged bird, in deer and elephant, in grazing cow, racing horse, and fish of the deep.
Your words, so unique and so varied, filled the earth also with rabbit, squirrel, and ant.
And all your words were beautiful, and all were good. From each of these holy words arose a prayer of praise and adoration.
To you, their creator and wondrous one, praise you who bring out the redwood. Blessed be you, chime in the cedar.
From all four corners of this earth rose up a chorus of perpetual adoration.
O sacred spirit, O divine breath of life, unseal my ears that they may ever listen to your continuous canticle of creation.
Open my heart and my whole self to sing in harmony with all its many voices.
Teach me to commune with your first word made flesh, your creation, that I may be able to unravel the wondrous words of your second word made flesh, Jesus, through whom, with whom, and in whom. May I see myself as another word of yours made flesh, to your glory and honor.
Amen. And let us listen to a very short reading from Genesis.
God saw all he had made, and indeed it was very good. Evening came, and morning came, the sixth day. Thus heaven and earth were completed with all their array. On the seventh day, God completed the work he had been doing. He rested on the seventh day, after all the work he had been doing. God blessed the seventh day and made it holy, because on that day he had rested after all his work of creating.
And let us pray the response. How about if this is side 1 over here, and this will be side 2 over here. Okay? To Psalm 8. O Lord, O Lord, our Lord, how glorious is your name over all the earth.
And I behold your heavens, the work of your fingers, the moon and stars, which you set in place.
What is man that you should be mindful of him, or the son of man that you should care for him?
You have made him little less than the angels, and crowned him with glory and honor.
You have given him rule over the works of your hands, putting all things under his feet.
O Lord our God, how glorious is your name over all the earth.
Glory be together. Glory be
To the Father, and to the Son, and the Holy Spirit, as it was in the beginning, is now, and ever shall be, world without end. Amen.
I'd like to just kind of what I want to do is some little prayers and reflections in between. So I just kind of want to weave these into our class today, okay? I wanted to look at to care for God's creation. I wanted to begin here with Genesis, because Genesis tells us a lot about who we are and what we're called to do. And somewhere I have some magic markers. You had some magic markers too, is that okay? That's good. In the very first part, in that creation story, it tells us there's 3 revelations about who we are, okay, and who God is, okay? So, the first one is that everything was created good. The original blessing. Sometimes we forget that we are created in the goodness, in the likeness of God. So that original blessing, God created everything good. Okay? And everything is gift. Everything is gift. And the second thing that we see revealed in there is that, and we didn't read that part, but God gave us dominion
Over the earth.
over creation. I'm not sure I'm going to spell this right. Anyway.
N-I-O-N.
G-I-O-N?
No.
No.
Domination. Close enough.
Take the A out of it, take the A out of it.
All
There
right.
you go, T-I-O.
I don't spell well when I'm not up in front, but I'm so even worse when I'm up here. All right, so it's dominion over all creation. What's the difference between dominion and domination?
Domination is a ruling.
Domination is control, right? I think there's been a lot of misunderstanding about our role. We are not called to dominate creation. We are called to be caretakers. Have you ever been a caretaker?
For children.
I was a caretaker in this magnificent place for a week, and you know what? By the time the week was over, I was happy they came back because it was too much to take care of. I was very nervous because I thought something was going to happen. Have you ever taken care of someone's children or somebody's animals? And you get very nervous because you think something's going to happen? I took my brother's dog to the beach because he's a golden retriever or a chocolate lab and he loves to swim. So I said to my brother, you want me to take him to the beach, to the bay and swim? We lost the dog. Oh my gosh. Talk about, he was gone for 24 hours. It was awful. Being a caretaker is a very responsible task. Because sometimes, I don't know about you, but I think I felt worse because it was my brother's dog than it had been my dog. Because I felt responsible. Well, I wonder if we feel as responsible for the creation of God's creation as we do if we're taking care of somebody else's things. And the third thing is that we are called to be in communion. We are one with. So the third revelation in that Genesis is that we are called to be in communion, community. In other words, it's not just for me or you, it's we together are called to be caretakers of the goodness, beauty of God, which is we are made in the image and likeness of God. But did you notice in that prayer that every species, even the ant, you may not like them on picnics and whatever, or they get in your house, everything is somewhat a reflection of the beauty of God, because he creates everything that is good. So the first thing that you and I need to do, I have a little thing, I hope I can find it here. The Holy Father said that he believes that one of the things that we have forgotten is how to contemplate, to be in wonder, and that we've lost that sense of wonder. How many times have you taken time this week to take time to look again and say, wow? Have you done it this week?
This morning's snow over everything this morning was absolutely
And you could say, wow.
just beautiful, wasn't it?
How many of you seen some crocus yet?
No.
We got some, it's probably because it's by the building and it's brick, so that it's warmer
Warmer.
there. Well, that was a wow experience to me. But what the Holy Father was saying is that we have lost our sense of wonder and awe, because you know what? We're too darn busy. I mean, I just think of what each one of us coming here tonight, where we have come from. And I have a feeling, no matter who we are, we have come from very busy lives and then got in the car and drove a distance, except for some people who didn't have to drive far, to get here. And so it's difficult sometimes to take time. And I don't know if you remember Mary Oliver, but she suggests that we do 3 things. And I think it goes right along here with, because we need to get in touch with the goodness, beauty that is around us. The first thing she says to do is be aware. In other words, wake up. Be aware. It's like I love in the Easter season particularly, especially for the Eastern Christian church, thinks of the resurrected Christ. The presence of the resurrected Christ is everywhere. So it's that, wow, where is God? Where is the resurrected Jesus? Everywhere. And I think in the springtime, that's why I love where we are in this part of the country. Springtime is, you know, after the ice and snow, you think there's no life, especially this winter. It felt like there was never any end of the ice and snow that piled higher and higher. I don't know, Watertown I think had a little bit more than you did, but I still think you had a lot up here too. And it's like you think, is there any life coming? And so I think that whole thing that nature teaches us a lot. And I think resurrection has to do with, in a sense, that sometimes after the ice and snow in our own lives, and we think, is it ever going to end? When one thing after another happens and it seems like, oh my gosh, where is God? Well, sometimes I think the ground must feel that way too. And yet God, out of that comes new life. And I think that's what Jesus brings to our awareness in the human sense, that out of darkness and out of difficulty comes new life. So that whole Paschal mystery is all right there in the unfolding of the seasons. And Jesus, in a sense, enters into that. So the first thing is to be aware, to look again. I think I told you this before, that one of the speakers, that Brian Swem, said that our greatest vocation, do you remember? I remember telling you this, but I'll refresh your memory in case you don't remember. Brian Swem says that our greatest vocation as human beings, he believes, is to be a gawker. Do you remember that? To be a gawker. What's a gawker?
Somebody that looks at everything.
Watching, staring, observing.
Staring, just.
Right, a gawker. They can tell people in New York City that are not natives because they're always looking up. It's like, so a gawker, in a sense, so he's saying that our greatest vocation, we're not human doers, are we? You think we are. But what are we called?
Beings.
We're human beings. So being a gawker is like looking again and saying, wow. So have you had any of those wow moments lately? Yeah? Good. I see some. Good. You just shared one. So her first thing is be aware and then notice. Take a look again. Take a look and look again to see what's really there. So when you see that first crocus or that first daffodil or the first robin or whatever, take time to look again to the gift of life, the gift of newness, the gift of reality. And then the third thing is, she tells us, share it with somebody. So that's half of it, isn't it? When you see something that really grabs you and strikes you, it makes it even better when you can share it with somebody. Okay, so the first thing that we need to do is to be aware of the goodness, truth, and beauty of God. And that means we have to slow down at least once a day. Supposing you took it today, that every day, at the end of the day, you're going to ask yourself, did I take time to look again? To see the goodness, truth, and beauty, whether it's a person, whether it's something around us in creation, because we're part of creation too. So did we take time today and just marvel at the gift and the beauty of life itself, the goodness of God that's reflected in us? So that's the first thing. Because I was thinking about the passion, death, and resurrection. Well, the first thing, the passion, I usually think of passion. If you are passionate about something, what does that mean? Give me another word. Caring. If I'm passionate about something, it means I care about something. So if I'm passionate about something, and I can't write down here, so I guess I have to erase. If I'm passionate about something, then you know what? When something happens to it, then I hope you wrote that down because I really didn't want to erase it. I want to go back to that. Go back here to the goodness. That I am really taken by the goodness, truth, and beauty. I care about God's creation. But what happens when I see that it's being destroyed? Whether it's a person, all you have to do is turn the news on these days. What does that do to you when you see what is happening to the human person and the gift of life? And what's happening to the gift of creation, the natural world? Does it grieve you? It's painful, it hurts. And I guess I really want to invite you to get in touch with what draws you, causes tears, brings you to tears. Are there things when you watch the news? Are there things in terms of God's creation? And because we're looking specifically, I don't want to say just the natural world or the human world, because you know what? We're all part of the same creation. I think one of the mistakes we've made is to say, well, the human world's over here and nature's over here, and sometimes it's, it's the humans against the earth. Wait a minute. Where did we come from?
Yeah, right. The earth.
You remember Ash Wednesday?
Yes.
You are dust until you dust you shall. I like to say we are stardust, and from stardust, that's where we come from, and that's where we go back. We are part of God's creation. We are the earth who has the capacity to reflect upon itself and say, wow, I'm not sure that my brother's golden chocolate lab can say, wow, when he looks at the sunset. I think he enjoys it, going out and running around. But I think the human person is the one who's been gifted with the ability to say, wow, and to be able to recognize the Creator. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Okay. So we have been given that ability to be able to. So it's not humans against the natural world. The challenge is how can we, remember the second word up here was dominion? How can we live in harmony with the natural world in a way that respects the natural world in itself and looks at the way that it can also help us to live? That's perfectly okay. However, is that the way we tend to look at the world and things in the world?
No.
How would you describe it? How would you describe our, I don't want to say American, because I think it is kind of our culture. How do we tend to look at the world?
Throw away.
Throw away. Thank you. There's one word. Hang on to that word. How do we tend to look at it? We don't always look at it in this goodness, truth, and beauty, and the wonder, and the whatever. How do we tend to look at it?
Unrealistic for what the other countries have to live, and we're living on such a good end of it, and they're living in dirt. They're dying in pits.
Okay, but I want to say, how do we look upon the earth, the natural world? What's our relationship with the natural world? That's what I'm trying to get at.
What am I
take
gonna
it
get
for
out of it?
granted.
What am I, oh, go ahead.
We take it for granted.
Take it
It's
for
always gonna
granted?
be there.
Okay, take it for granted?
A consumable commodity?
Ah, I think you hit, yes, I think that's a big piece. A commodity. Do you see the difference when I see it in relationship? That we are part of the whole, in community? And when you see it as a commodity, what changes? What shifts?
What we value.
What
How
we-
we value it.
How we value it, okay? How we value it, okay? Anybody want to come up with any other words beside that? in
Kind of
terms I like what you
separation
said.
too.
What'd you say?
Separated. Because sometimes when we see the strife and the things that are going on, and we're in our own little world, we're kind of separated from it and think that it doesn't affect us. When in
Okay,
reality,
so we're disconnected,
Disconnected,
disconnected with the natural world. Okay? And if we don't take time to do that wonder and that being with and really experiencing the beauty and the richness and to feel that sense of oneness, at least momentarily every day, then in a sense we begin to look like we are kind of on top and we kind of just use. Now, what's that? Magic marker. Martin Buber. Anybody ever heard of Martin Buber? He was a Jewish philosopher. But he talks about the I-it relationship. That's what you're describing there is the commodity. It's I and it. Do we sometimes treat each other like that? You're there because I need you. And if you can't do what I want you to do, then you're out of here. our attitude towards the natural world tends to also flow into our relationship with each other. Because we're all part. Would you agree?
Yes.
We tend to look at other people as, when it's convenient. Now, what's the other kind of relationship? How would you describe the other relationship? Can you think of a word? We? Okay. Martin would say it's the I-thou relationship. Meaning that there's a oneness. The I-thou is that I am one with. You're not an object. This is the object. I-it is an object relationship. But the I-thou relationship is one of communion, is being with. So that everyone in every species has a place. Everything is sacred. Now, if I really were in touch with that, would that make an effect? Would that have an effect upon the way in which I interacted with people and things? So it all comes down to a shifting. Is it okay to use things for our own need? I'm losing this pen right now. Got a little blue on my hand. Is that an okay thing?
Yeah.
Yeah. So when does it become an obstacle?
When you abuse it.
When what?
Misuse it and abuse it.
Okay, when I don't use it well. I don't respect it. I don't honor it. I don't give it respect for what it is and being grateful for what it is. Okay, so that whole thing then has to do with the goodness and the domination versus the dominion is what we're called to. However, we see that sometimes we don't treat things that way. And what happens when we don't? When we begin to be simply users?
Everything's affected. Everything's affected.
Everything is affected.
Everything's affected. And not
And
for
you
the
know-
good either.
And
Not
what?
for the common good either.
Okay, what happens when we become very focused on things in terms of myself, I become very thoughtless, selfish, and I don't think of others. Now, I think Deacon Patrick, I think gave you a sheet on fair trade versus free trade. Tell me what the difference between fair trade and free trade is. Here's free versus fair. What's the difference?
Is it fair trade that's looking out for
Where's your-
I'm sorry. Is it fair trade that's looking out for the less fortunate?
Which one?
Is it fair or free?
The brokers.
One of them.
Let's look at free first. What's free trade? Did we not have this big agreement, free trade agreement in North America?
And that
Yeah.
be with Canada and United
NAFTA,
States.
Yes.
North
What-
American Free Trade Agreement.
Okay, was that looked upon as something good?
Mm-hmm.
Wow, yeah. Well, who was it good for?
North America.
For the big business, it was good
Yes.
for them. They exploited Mexico pretty much.
It was good for big business, because you know what? They didn't have the tariffs and the things that would make it more expensive. So you know what happened? I was talking to a sister of St. Joseph in Orange, California, and she knew her family actually was in Mexico, and so she was talking to a woman in Mexico. So you know, one of the effects of that for her and her family was that now that there was free trade, then the companies in the U.S. could send to Mexico and sell them cheaper than the people could raise their crops on their own land. And so guess what? People bought up the cheap stuff. They couldn't sell their crops. And so what happened? They ended up having to sell their land because they couldn't make a living. And so they sold their land and moved to the city. And guess what?
No job.
No jobs. So do we wonder why people are trying to get into our country? They're desperate.
Well, one of our products was put up for bid, and a company in Mexico got the bid. They had the lowest bid because they had cheap labor and they didn't have to pay benefits to the people.
See,
So we lost one of our main products because
So-
of free trade.
okay, so there's two things. Sometimes in developing countries, they do not have as strict regulations environmentally, so therefore they don't have all these restrictions. And secondly, the labor is very cheap. Okay, so it has an effect. So what did we lose out here? We had the goodness of God, and we had the fact that we're called to be, is this the right side?
No, other side. That's where your hands.
Okay, yeah, that's why my hands are all blue. I did not use this pen well. All right, so the
Matching your
goodness,
outfit.
the caretakers, but the caretaker was caretaking of the earth, the natural world, but what was the other third thing about? Who else are we supposed to care about?
Community.
Community. And so what happens when all you look at is the profit, but you forget about the effect that it has upon the natural world and what happens to the community?
Suffers.
So can you see here that we're moving into some issues in terms of justice and injustice? So that's why did everybody read that 2 or 3 page thing on fair trade?
Yes.
Okay, tell me what fair trade is now. Now that we know what free trade is, and that it sometimes is good for some people, and it means we can buy products cheaper. So in a way, it's good for us because I can go to the store and get it a lot cheaper than I could have because there were no big whatevers and there was cheap labor and there was few environmental whatevers, and so I could get it cheap. So yeah, sometimes that feels good to me too. If I don't think about who paid for it.
You buy direct from the farmer or from the person who's making the.
Okay,
Cut
okay,
out the
let's
middleman.
stay on the fair trade. Okay, keep going. So you buy it from the local farmer.
Right, and bring it here and you can sell it cheaper because there's no middleman there to
Okay.
sell it.
One of the things with fair trade is that there's a company in the United States that guarantees, let's say for the coffee, which you have tonight, is fair trade coffee and tea. It guarantees that there will be a set price, a fair price given to the farmer wherever it's grown in the world, even here in the United States. It guarantees a fair price for their coffee. You see, for the person, the little guy the little farmer who works hard all year, brings his coffee to the marketplace, has no control over what the price is. And you know what? The world companies are looking for the cheapest coffee. So when you go to these, I won't say names, but when you go to your favorite coffee shop, you pay big bucks for one cup of coffee, right?
Mm-hmm.
Some more than others. But you'd be amazed at what the coffee grower gets. And if that price goes down even a small amount, it might make the difference between whether they survive or not, their families. So when you buy fair trade products, there's a guaranteed price so that the farmer and their families and their community, we're back to community, is guaranteed that what profits they make, they don't keep it for themselves. The profits are going back into the community for healthcare, for schools, for community, building up the community. So can you see the difference? Tonight, I also got you some, I stopped, that's why I was a little bit late tonight. I got you some fair trade cocoa, chocolate. Some is dark and some is milk chocolate. And I'll put them over there with the coffee. And they guarantee that the coffee that's fair trade is not picked by child labor. A lot of the chocolate, you probably know that, is a lot of it is child labor in, I think it's West Africa.
Mm-hmm.
And so they guarantee that they are not picked, the cocoa.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
It might be a silly one, but where do you buy stuff like that?
Well, in Watertown is the Agape shop, which is run by the Mennonites. But I would say maybe, see, I don't know Messina that well. Canton has a lot of fair trade. If you go to the Blackbird Cafe in Canton, they have fair trade coffees and teas and whatever. If you go to the Nature Storehouse, the Mustard Seed in Watertown, lots of times natural food stores.
Walmart, you can get them in Hannaford.
So
Yes,
where-
you
You
where-
just
can.
have to look at the label and it'll say fair trade.
Oh, okay.
Yes, and you'll see there's a sign, there's a symbol. I've noticed that at the Tops, I noticed in Watertown, Tops, and Price Chopper also. Sometimes you just have to ask. I understood, I went to a coffee grower here that does his own roasting and whatever here in the area. And he said really the most reliable is Green Mountain coffee. And the reason is because they buy so much of it that you're sure that it's fair trade. So, I don't know, we had conversation every time we go in, you'd have a new insight on this fair trade stuff, so anyway. But as I was thinking about it, I was thinking, that's not terribly different than right here in our own North Country. What would be comparable to this kind of situation? How could we support, not just fair trade in terms of coffee and cocoa?
Like buying from an
Buying
Amish
things-
stand?
Buying things locally instead of going to
Yeah.
another town or something.
Okay, do you have a
Local.
farmer's market here in
Yes.
Messina? Okay. Well, first of all, you could grow your own food. But if you don't have time or the skills to grow your own food, then supporting your local farmer helps that farmer make a living using the gifts of our land, and the money goes back into building up your own community. Otherwise, when we buy big, massive whatever, or stores, whatever, where do the profits go? They're not here. They're not in Messina.
Yeah, and even like maple syrup, so prevalent around here, Why go to the store and buy something that's
Probably not as good.
imitation? It's not even.
So I remember my dad was always buy local.
Same with sweet corn.
Because you know what? You might pay a little bit more, but if something happens, they're there and they're gonna come and help you
Yeah.
or fix it.
Yeah.
And so I know a lot of fair trade kind of sense is that you build community. I don't know about you, but when I lived in Canton, I would plan, I might only have 2 or 3 things I wanted to get at the farmer's market, but I figured it would take me at least an hour or more. Because you got to know people, and that's where you socialize, and you
Right.
got to see people once a week that you didn't get to see otherwise. And you made connections with the farmers, so you had certain ones. I used to go and buy something from one farmer and then go and buy something else just to kind of spread it around. But you began to get to know people. So there's something about that sense of community. And I think it's more difficult for us because of just our culture today. So much of the stuff is bought, prepared, cooked, not cooked, but, manufactured or whatever away
Packaged.
from.
Yes.
So anyway, that whole sense of the difference between fair and free. So, what does the church have to say about all of this? Does the Catholic social teachers tell us anything? Let's go back here to the, is this the side?
Yes, and dark side.
The dark side, okay. Okay. So as you look around, we looked at the human perspective here in the sense, because that's part of the creation. But how about the natural world? What are the things that brings tears to your eyes as you think about in the natural world that really makes you sad?
Fracking.
Fracking, okay. In terms of what natural?
Water water sources can be totally damaged for all kinds of communities, for outreaching areas that they don't know where the table's going, and it can
So
destroy farmers' land for drought and everything.
So from the standpoint of water alone,
Mm-hmm.
when you think of the millions of gallons, so I think that was a plus that New York State did
Turn
put a
it away.
moratorium on it
Mhm.
because of, well, there's a lot of reasons. There's a lot of, it's a short-term versus long-term.
Mhm.
It might give us energy immediately, but long-term, I don't know how much you know about it, but it's
Well,
pretty
the
devastating.
city, they
You
had,
said under
city had
earthquakes.
a meeting on it, and what it was is they wanted to try and do that down the Bridge and Port Authority, right where the bridge goes over, and they wanted to, but they couldn't guarantee that the shelving of the water tables for the city of Augsburg would not be affected by it, so the city turned it down because the studies weren't as in-depth as they should have been.
Yeah, okay, so that's one thing. What else grieves you? Brings tears to your eye when you think about the destruction.
It is the animals when they're, because their future won't have a lot of animals that we have. Like
The rate,
lions and elephants and stuff.
the rate of destruction of species is unbelievable. I'm not good on facts, but the amount of, and I was listening to TPR one time, and they were saying, well, what's the big deal? You know, like there are things that go extinct anyway. And he said, the thing is that it's never to this extent have things gone extinct in an incredible number, which everything is a reflection of the divine. And so when you lose a species, you lose that reflection. And you think of your children, your grandchildren, they won't have the richness if things continue to progress. And one of the other pieces is that we overfish, kill, whatever, so that it does have an effect upon the whole. I forget what the percentage. I really wanted to show you a DVD tonight, and it was on YouTube, so we couldn't do it. So I really, really, really want you to take 20 minutes, sit down with your family or whoever, and watch this DVD. It's funny, but it's sobering. And maybe you've already seen it. It's on the YouTube, and it's called The Story of Stuff. Have anybody ever watched it? Anybody seen it? The Story of Stuff. It's 20 minutes. It's very fast moving. I like it because she has facts, and I'm really not good in facts, but some of the facts are pretty staggering. There's 5% of the forest. I think it's in this country. We only have 5% of the forest that we had in the beginning. 5%. Wow. And we look around because we live up here in the North Country, and you go to the mountains, you think, oh, well, there's no problem with it. We certainly have more trees than we know what to do with.
Yeah, but the trees aren't very old.
That's right.
If you look
And
at
I
the
look
trees,
at it when they build
yeah,
new
trees
subdivisions
aren't
and
old at all.
they clear everything out.
They don't even go back and plant it.
No, they don't.
Instead of being, how do they call it? It's a sustainable forestry.
It's not managed.
Managed, thank you. That's the word. So, and it just, one of the facts was about how many in the rainforest. Every second, like 2,000 are cut every minute. I mean, it's just staggering when you think about this stuff.
They cut trees that are really old and not thinking that you need those trees for later.
Right. Okay, so I want you to be thinking about what grieves your heart when you look around at our human family and at the natural family, because we're all part of creation. And the little DVD that we have, and I'm not sure, what time is it? I don't know, maybe we'll do the DVD right after, and you can
7:25.
play with it and see if it's only 2 minutes, but it's called Who's Under Our Carbon Footprint? Who's under our carbon footprint? So, anyway, it's 2 minutes, but I'd rather wait. And so I want to go back here to the question. So, what has the church been saying about this? How many of you read your chapter, Caring for God's Creation? So, you can tell me, can't you? Has the church been silent about this?
No.
Absolutely not. I don't know why we don't hear a lot about it. It's a crucial part of who we are in a mission of our church, of followers of Jesus. It's the heart of, and it started way back in the Old Testament, way back then, in the sense of the care. A king was judged by how well he took care of the orphan and the widow. And if he didn't do a good job with that, they could kick him out. I mean, they could dethrone him.
I like the part about every 7 years, the land was to lay idle, to allow it to replenish itself.
Exactly,
You know?
exactly.
Can you imagine that happening today?
Farmers do that.
They do
Do they?
Farmers,
I'm not a farmer.
they
so,
rotate,
yeah.
they rotate. different
They rotate, but do
acreage.
they let it stay
They don't
fallow?
let, no, not for 7
Just for a year.
Okay.
And then I got thinking, the Holy Father, I understand in December, is supposed to proclaim a year, a Jubilee year, and it's going to be a year of mercy, so it'll be very interesting how this plays out, how it unfolds. But you know, I got thinking about that too, in the reading that we had, after 7 days, what did God do in the story of creation? How many, I'm not going to ask you to raise your hand, how many of us really took Sunday, or if you worked on Sunday, took another whole day that you didn't productively do stuff, and you really celebrated life, God,
Family.
family, exactly. Or took a walk, took a hike, did something that was fun. Just the sheer joy of celebrating life, whatever
That was
that
one
is.
of the neat things about living over in Europe when we lived in Germany. Nothing was open on Sunday, nothing.
Okay,
And
so
people
that's a
spent
good
time
point.
with their
Used to be
families.
like
That's a
that.
good point,
You
because
couldn't even buy gas.
is it difficult today?
Yeah.
Is it difficult?
Yeah.
We had a professor who absolutely would not buy anything on Sunday because he did not want those people to work.
Yeah.
And somebody would say, well, they're going to work anyway, so it doesn't matter if I do it or not. No, he would not buy anything on Sunday. Now, this was quite a while ago. I don't know who it
But if
is
everybody
now.
did that, then they would stop. They would
If
not.
everybody did that,
Yeah.
if everybody did that. But in our culture, I think it's hard for us to take a Sabbath. Would you agree? I know it. But I can tell you, there's a million things I think I can do on whether it's Sunday or day off. You know what I'm saying? So to let the land lie fallow every 7 years, hey, it's hard for us to take a day and not do something productive work. I don't know. I mean, I just think that's something we struggle with. I struggle with it in our culture because it's so taken for granted. I actually had somebody who was upset because the stores weren't open on Easter. Most of them were not. But you know what her philosophy? She says, well, they're open on Christmas and they're open on Thanksgiving, but I don't know why they're not open on Easter.
Same deal.
I would have said the other thing. I read it, if they were going to do an editorial, I'd have done it the other way, that this was great. It's too bad we don't do it on Christmas and Thanksgiving too. But anyway, I just want to, there's an excellent article here, and I'm going to give you a copy of it. It goes back as far as St. Francis. The article comes from the Catholic Rural Life magazine. And if you would write that down as a resource. I don't know what you're doing your paper on, and I don't care what you're doing your paper on. I'd like you to know this as a resource for life. It doesn't matter what you're doing your paper on, and whatever you're drawn to do is wonderful. But I think it's important that we begin to find resources that will keep us up to date on the Catholic social teachings that illuminate our culture today.
What's it called?
And that's one of them.
What's it called again?
Catholic Rural Life.
Rural.
Rural, as in farms.
Catholic. Rural. Rural.
Rural.
Rural. Rural. Rural.
What I had right down.
Rural life.
Okay, Cindy.
Okay? Anyway, I just found this fascinating. There was a whole thing on water in there. There's just articles after articles. and positive things, what different people are doing to turn things around. It's very hopeful, I think. Anyway, this whole article starts with St. Francis and goes all the way to our contemporary Pope Francis, and outlines how the church, in a sense, beginning particularly with the condition of the worker in Pope Leo the 13th, and how it goes through all the way through. And do you think there's a reason why more recently, especially the bishops have been talking about it in all countries, not just ours. The U.S. Catholic bishops have done a lot and talked about it in the last maybe 20 years. The popes have been saying a lot about it. Even John the 23rd, John Paul II, certainly Benedict, some of the books over here, Benedict, his 10 Commandments for the Environment. Have any of you seen that book? It's very profound stuff. This one here is a more recent, it's 2002. This is on global climate change, a plea for dialogue, prudence, and common good. There's some profound stuff in there. And you know that the Holy Father is supposedly going, the encyclical on the environment should be out in June or July. I just read another article on it. And he's definitely going to be talking about climate change. Now, I know that there's a debate, and there's people who say, oh, there isn't any climate change, that this is just a natural phenomenon that's going to happen, and we really don't have anything to do with it, so cool it. Well, there's a lot of people, I think, trying to tell us cool it, but I think some of those people are the ones that are causing the pollution.
Yeah.
Could be wrong, but I think there's a connection here. But anyway, the point of the matter for me, I don't want to get in an argument with people about whether there is or there isn't, whether we are the cause or whether there's a natural process of nature that's happening, because you see, that's possible that the climate is changing. However, there's such a proof that we are, as humans, increasing by pollution. We are doing devastating things to God's creation. So that whole thing of climate change, did anybody go to Canton when Bill Gibbons? No, but it was the talk just recently.
Oh.
It was last Wednesday. Did anybody go to that? Was Bill Gibbons?
Instead of a workshop.
It was Advocate Urges Climate Change Action, 3:30. No, it's not 3:30, it's 3:50. Are any of you in touch with that at all?
We got an email from Jeannie that Patrick said that we could go to that in place of a
Oh, that's one
workshop.
of our workshops.
Yes.
Okay, but I think this is not the one in Canton. I think the one,
Yes.
was it the one in Canton?
There was one in Canton, and there was another one in Plattsburgh, I think.
No, there's one in Watertown.
Watertown. I'm going to give you a sheet
Wasn't there
here.
something in Plattsburgh too?
I don't know.
I think so. I think there was.
Oh, there's lots of stuff going on in Plattsburgh.
Yeah.
And there's sustainable groups both in SUNY Canton and St. Lawrence. But anyway, I think it's possible that it's not an either or. Is it possible that it could be a natural thing? But the fact that we're
accelerating it.
Accelerating it, exactly.
Yeah.
And all you have to do is look at the devastation, whether it's a question of that or not. It's a question of what we've been talking about here is how are we using the resources we've been given and sharing it with others and being concerned about others and not just making profit. So I think there's ethical questions no matter where you stand on the climate change, whether that question, I think there's no question in the sense about the challenge of us caring for and sharing and being responsible to our neighbors. Okay, let's take a break. Thank you.
Who's under your carbon footprint? Using too much energy, driving bigger cars, heating bigger houses, using more hot water. It all means more greenhouse gases and a bigger carbon footprint. And that means adding to the problem of climate change. More heat, more droughts, more floods, more storms, more joblessness. So who's getting stepped on? Who is under your carbon footprint?
It is the poor who most directly bear the brunt of environmental degradation.
And the longer we wait to curb our use of fossil fuels, our footprint gets a little heavier and a little deeper.
Coming changes will affect all aspects of the environment, especially for the poor and the vulnerable.
When we demand bigger, better, and more, the world's vulnerable get poorer, hungrier, and less.
Environmental degradation makes the life of the poor especially unbearable.
In Scripture, Matthew reminds us that ultimately we will be judged by how we treat the least among us.
Just as you did it to one of the least of these who are members of my family, you did it to me.
As Catholics, we have a moral obligation to care for the poor and the most vulnerable. But today, too often, we are wasting God's gifts, abusing the planet, changing the climate, and leaving too many with too little for full human development.
There is new and stronger evidence that most of the warming over the last 50 years is attributed to human activities.
Now, prudence demands action.
Inaction and inadequate responses will likely place even greater burdens on poor peoples.
As Catholics, in the face of climate change, we can recommit to what we already do well by reaching out to the most vulnerable here and around the world, by renewing our Catholic commitment to care for God's creation, by living our faith, by treading more lightly, and acting more boldly. We can care for creation and the poor. As St. Francis reminds us,
Praise be you, my Lord, through our sister Mother Earth, who sustains and governs us.
as Catholics, we can live up to our obligation to be in solidarity with the poor by understanding the consequences of every step we take and choosing wisely, by consuming less, by conserving more, by advocating on behalf of those without a voice. Join Catholics already making a difference through our parishes and schools, within our families and dioceses, as individuals and Catholic institutions. Take the St. Francis Pledge to care for creation and the poor, and register your commitment at CatholicClimateCovenant.org. Who's under your carbon footprint? It is those who we are most obligated to protect. For them, your faith is the beginning of hope.
Our Earth speaks to us, and we must listen if we want to survive.
Take a step in the right direction.
At its core, global climate change is not simply about economic theory or political reforms, nor about partisan advantage or interest group pressures. Rather, global climate change is about the future of God's creation and the one human family. It is about protecting both the human environment and the natural environment. It is about our human stewardship of God's creation and our responsibility to those who come after us.
I think that webpage is on your list of resources.
Yeah, it's on the back.
Okay. So if you have a chance, browse that and take that pledge. I'm going to pass out a hard copy of it, but to actually register it, you need to go online.
Shut down.
What did you hear? You can just turn it on. Oh, yeah. What did you hear? Give me a word.
Poor.
Did you hear? Here, the poor. The poor.
Responsibility.
Vulnerable.
Caring for creation.
Caring for creation. Carbon footprint. Carbon footprint.
We have a Catholic duty.
We have
A Catholic duty.
a Catholic duty.
But there's parts that aren't, you're not hearing. Taking care of the poor means more than just seeing that picture. China has so much pollution that the people that are living right there have to wear masks. And us taking care of the poor means making our politicians make agreements that stop China and make them control the pollution, because that goes around the globe. And that's what's killing the poor.
But who has been creating a lot of pollution before the Chinese had the power to do it?
America.
Yeah, but we have very
I-
strong words.
Just as you did it to the least of my brothers, you did it for me.
But if you go on the computer and you ask for the top polluted areas, what has the worst pollution, the United States is not at the top.
Is what?
Is not at the top. There are some countries that are so bad.
Because
And
you
we're not
see-
doing anything to stop them.
They have our technology now.
You know,
Look at our international willingness to make restrictions. I'm not saying we're not doing anything. Please don't misunderstand me. But listen up when you go to the Paris thing. That's the big international climate change, whatever. And whatever you can do to support, it's your Congress people to support regulations here as well as there. It's not like, well, because, what do you see when you see this?
the world turning.
What's the word, what's a word that describes?
Beautiful.
Yeah, it is beautiful. It's like, have you ever read any of the things of the astronauts? They said it was like a beautiful marble, and you could take your thumb and blot it out. I mean, it was like they were so far away that it was like the fragileness of it, the beauty, the awesomeness.
I think to your question, I think
There's two different ways, all right.
Water.
So, what's the difference between this and this? What do you notice?
One has borders.
One has borders. Okay, do you see how this is all divided up? We divided it all up, right?
Yes.
That's the human, whatever. So this kind of has a sense of isolation. You know, like what I do here, or whatever, is not going to affect anybody else. Or, do you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Acid rain to me was a big thing. That I don't know, that was a big thing in the sense that, you know, I mean, the Adirondacks were experiencing it. It was Canada and the United States has to work together. It's not like, oh, well, here's the line. So, you know. No, it's all one. It's all one. How many bodies of water are there?
One.
One. How many continents do we talk about here?
7.
7. How many really land masses are there here?
One.
There's really one. And as I listened to the reading of the scripture, it talks about everything was water, and then there was land, which came up from, so there was land. So, this is isolation. This has to do with
Universal.
universal collaboration, oneness. Okay, and another word in the sense of relationships. This is kind of like who's on top. It's climbing the ladder. What does this have to do with?
Community.
Has to do with what?
Community.
Oneness.
Togetherness.
Solidarity.
Solidarity, oneness, collaboration, partnership. This has to do with working together as one. You think that's a challenge? Now, does it mean we lose our individuality, our different cultures, and the beauty and the richness of our different... No, it's not about that at all. It's honoring and respecting that, but it's figuring out how we can all sit around the table when decisions are made. It was a beautiful thing. I didn't bring it with me because I'm not going to quote it well. But it's like charity is giving from the crumbs from our table. Justice is everyone sitting at the table to make the decisions. Everyone. Not just some people with power. Not some of the people on top. Everyone. I told you the story of our NGO at the UN, our representative of the Sisters of St. Joseph. I might have told you this before. Anyway, she was from Mexico. And our federation is the American Federation, and so, you know, we have our way of doing things. And the Americans are about getting out there and fixing stuff. So, when she was first, she came from Mexico, and she was our representative. Do you know the first night, what we did? She brought with her, matzo, I think is the name of the tea, And she gave each one of us a little cup. It was a cup that was made out of, it's red, you know, clay, like a little clay.
Terracotta?
Everybody, yes, terracotta, thank you. Everybody had a little, and she went around and gave us a cup of tea. And we sat and reflected and shared, kind of like that which was heavy on our heart. Or it was a social justice coordinators meeting from around the United States and Canada. It set a whole different tone because it was, she said, we don't need you to come and fix us. We need you to come and sit and have a cup of tea so we can share what's on our heart and we can work together, because that's recognizing that everybody who sits at the table has something to give to the whole. Do you see the difference? I was determined when I took the students to South America, to Peru, that we were not going down to fix things. We were going down to share with the college students there their dreams, their hopes, their faith, their struggles, and to work with them in ministry. Where they ministered, we went and worked with them. And it was just a different kind of way of being. So anyway, so just these two, it's important to be in touch with our worldview. One, in a sense, is not better than the other, but they're different. And I think some of the things you shared before about the dominating and the isolation kind of comes from when we look at the world this way. Would you agree?
Yeah.
All I could think of was Jesus in the gospel, especially in the Last Supper, was that we are all one, that they may be one. And I was thinking as a human family, we're called to be one. Anyway, I want to give you a few minutes to, share. And I'm going to just have you share from where you are, like this group here, we just turn around to the people here, and you in the back are going to turn around to the other, and vice versa. So just arrange yourself. I'd say 4 is good, or 3. If you get any more than that, it gets very difficult. You don't have time. You're going to have a limited amount of time. So this is what I'm going to ask you to do, because this is we don't have a lot of time. The first thing I'd like you to look at, do you remember the A, which is action? What's the thing that's heavy on your heart in terms of the natural world? Okay? Because even though they're very closely connected, your other chapter focuses more on the dignity or the worker and the dignity of human life. They're all connected. They're all one. But for this time, I'd like you to focus on what in the natural world concerns you. That's the first thing, the action. And then what do you think is the root of the problems? And then the third thing, the T, is the transformation, because we begin to see things differently, okay? Because that will affect the way we act. Once we begin to see some of the connections of our actions, then we begin to look for different ways that will bring life. Is that clear enough? You're gonna, what's heavy on your heart? What's the thing that brings tears to your eyes or touches your heart that you're concerned about?
Our water systems.
Okay, now, so, can you get your groups, turn around here? So it'll either be 4 or 3, but please don't make them any more than 4, because you will not have time for everybody to talk. 3 and 3? Okay. Okay?
And I was thinking about water, because the ocean, that's like the key to life.
Why don't you switch so that you can talk to each other?
You can talk to each other in bed, tickle your toes, whatever.
Why don't you come
I don't know,
down
he's
this way?
eating my jelly beans, I might not.
Those aren't jelly beans, those are malt beans.
It's heavy on your heart, Mark.
As Steve said, it's
Okay, wait a minute.
What did you say? It's a major.
Oh, that's like the key. Yes. Without the oceans, we're done. That's the key to life.
And you can come over here.
The ocean's freshwater.
Yeah. I mean, every drop of water on this planet has been water is never it goes up into the atmosphere and then it comes back down. It's raining. It's always there. It's moving in different places. So you can't afford to destroy it by pollution because without it, we're done. Our bodies are like 80% water. It's industrialization. The nuclear reactors right on the shore because they suck in water, and then there's an earthquake, and huge swaths of that Japanese coastline are all destroyed. We've ruined water systems. Back a few years ago, I have a buddy that lives right down here in the center. When he was a kid, him and his buddy used to fish that Grass River slope that goes down there behind where Walmart used to be. He said when they were down there at night going fishing, they'd be down there like midnight or 1 o'clock in the morning going fishing. A big tanker would come down from Alcoa, back up, and just dump whatever was in that tanker right in the Grass River.
Yeah, that's right.
And they did that for years.
I'm looking at it.
Yeah. So yeah, now they, but they, everybody down on the reservation is,
No, it's not, but they have,
it's got
they went and put billions of dollars into that. Have you been out by Alcoa? Like they spent millions of dollars in this cleanup. And they built this system, there's a hole in there, and then you're gonna have mesh in there that's supposed to filter that pollution out. It's
they get special water
It's
treatment.
not working.
It's not. So even in Ogdensburg, Ogdensburg is on the same place. Huge stretches of the shoreline of Ogdensburg cannot be used because of factories. Ogdensburg didn't use their water from tourism. They used it back in the old days. Powerful people in Ogdensburg owned businesses, and so the whole shoreline of Ogdensburg was with factories and these great big tank farms, where they have like big tank storage tanks filled with oil, and, so everything's polluted now. Okay, you can't eat you can only eat so many fish because of the mercury that's in
Yeah, but they tell you only so many, but doesn't it really make you wonder what you
Yeah, I eat it. I eat fish, but you have to be careful. You can't eat it every day. What's the answer? Governments are Clean Water Acts and things like that, But they give these big businesses because they have so much power. They give them 20 years to clean up. In the meantime, they're still continuing to dump.
No, they don't.
I mean, like OSHA and EPA and the DEC, they've got it in there. So they're policed a lot better than they used to, But we can do our own little part by not dumping stuff on the ground, not dumping oil on the ground, and stuff like that. You can't pollute your own neighborhood either. The way it's going, the oceans are becoming. There's no way.
There was just an article, there was a bunch of baby seals being washed up on the shore too. The waters are so warm that the parents have to go farther, and so they're abandoning the homes. Just search for fun.
Up in the Arctic, the glaciers have melted to the point that those big, huge ice flows that form in the winter, they're melting. The polar bears don't have any place to
I know,
run.
and they can't get up. They find a small space. Pretty soon they're all back into the water again because it
So they're starving.
Yeah.
It's such a domino effect, Like it affects all these really delicate species, and things like El Niños and stuff that happen, these big algae blooms that come in and they kill everything along the coastline.
What is it?
Industrialization is horrible.
The big one, instead of sitting on it.
that controls the politicians in big donations, they're still cutting down trees. You know, there's 3 seasons in South America: spring or winter, summer, and you can see the smoke of burning in South America from space. It's so big. You know, and the westerly winds,
They're clear cutting?
they're clear cutting the land, and they're cutting down thousands of acres of forest because they cut it down, they sell the wood, and then they farm it, but the soil is very delicate. These trees have very shallow roots, so they can only farm it for about 2 years, and then the soil and then move on to another spot. So they're just destroying it. And once there's no root system of trees, floods come through and wash it. That happened over in Nepal. All the trees were cut down and put cut everything down for firewood, and then everything was on the soil. Now they're burning yak dung. They pick up the dung from the yaks, and that's what they burn because the trees are gone.
What about the rainforest too? A lot of them, we get a lot of ones and they're
There's species that are being destroyed that have never even been discovered yet.
I know. It's awful.
Pollution. You know, we just turn a blind eye to it because we're so used to it. You know, our generation grew up at the start of it pretty much, you know, in the 50s, 40s, 50s, and now it's, you know, we don't even pay any attention to it anymore. We don't even think about it unless you read an article, you know. You know, the Clean Air Act, the Clean Water Act, they give these companies 20 years to put a scrubber in their smokestack, you know. Or, you know, stop doing this, you gotta cut back your number of the amount of what you dump into the river, you gotta cut back by 10% each year, or something like that. It's just a Band-Aid. Yeah, right, they got the big money. You know, if you're a congressman or a senator from West Virginia, there's a huge chemical plant in your district, you're not going to shut that down. That's money. That's jobs. That's money. You know, so I mean, the environment suffers. The environment takes the back seat. I don't believe at this point in time, they'll be able to do anything wrong. You know, not now. I mean, there's going to have to be an Armageddon. There's going to have to be something that's so devastating that everybody has to go back to living off the land. You know, then things will be different.
And what is this land? We're
What's
going to
gonna
live
be
off
left,
all these
right?
chemicals and everything
Yeah, right.
that we've used.
Has everybody had a chance to talk?
Yes.
Okay, you got about 5 more minutes, so you can continue on in the sense of what you might want to do about what's heavy on your heart. But I want to make sure everybody at least has a chance to share.
What can we do to help? We can support the politicians that advocate. You know, you can recycle. You can use Brita filters and things like that rather than use bottled water. You know, there's enough plastic bottles like this that to go around the world like 1,000 times.
I know.
So you use something that
So what are we
filters
doing?
water. I know. So we got these things. I know. It's crazy. You can use like California. They're gonna jail people. Take long showers. Did you see that? Because there's such an incredible drought out there that they're in big trouble.
Sewage water. And even goes back into the drinking system.
Yeah, they run it through heavy duty filtering systems. I mean, here, like we have these sewage treatment plants, you know, it cleans up the water, and then it goes back into the river, you know. Right, and then they suck the water out of the river, and they filter it, and that's what you drink. Yeah, you know. Not a lot of water left out there. There are places, I mean, we're so surrounded by water, we take that for granted. There are places where their water is in big trouble. Go out to Arizona, and wells are like 1,000 feet down to get water. They have to have these great huge pumps to get it up to the surface. They store it in big tanks because it's too expensive to just turn on the faucet every time, you know. So it's really crazy, just really crazy. How to end global warming. Yeah, you know, there's a lot of people that have a problem with global warming, but if you look at what's going on in the Arctic and all the glaciers that have melted, come on. You know, that,
Gotta tell you something.
Right, exactly. All the temperature has to change is 1 degree. 1 degree makes a huge difference. Everything melts with 1 degree. You know, so it's a big difference, you know.
Okay, if you want to finish your sentence and then just move your chairs back, please.
I was tempted.
I didn't even eat that last malted milk ball. I was tempted.
How are you feeling now? Let's take a little temperature here. How are you feeling?
Too many problems. Making us more aware of things, that's for sure.
Okay, feelings. You said depressed.
Yes.
Give us some feelings. How's your temperature?
Angry.
Angry.
Confused.
Confused.
Yeah, overwhelmed.
Overwhelmed.
Yeah.
Misguided.
Sadness.
Sadness.
Misguided. Troubled.
Exploited.
Exploited, yes.
That's a
Troubled.
good one.
By big government and big industry.
Okay, now,
Guilty.
the thing is,
Yeah, guilty.
yep,
You betcha.
the piece though is finding the light in the darkness. Because you know, you somehow have to know the pain and the suffering of others and the earth. I was thinking we were reading the crucifixion. The reading today was Peter telling them that they had crucified Jesus. And it came to mind that in a sense we could say we have been crucifying the earth. Think about it. We are the body of Christ. The body of Christ is creation. Yes? So we have to enter into that suffering of our brothers and sisters and the creation. Jesus entered into the death, and it calls us to die to some ways that we've been living in order to bring new life. And I think that's the challenge, not to wallow in the despair and the whatever. But Jesus came to bring light. So the challenge for you and me too is what is heavy on my heart. What is one thing I might do? Can't do it all, can't save the world. You don't have to, Jesus already saved it. It's okay. But we can all do some one thing. So tonight when you go home, I want you to think about it and pray about what's heavy on your heart and ask the Lord to help you to find one thing that you might be able to do. And I want to tell you one thing, simple, that I finally got myself to do. And it was something as simple as this little mug. I got tired of trashing the planet. No, this sounds very, I'm not going to trash the planet. Well, how do we begin? I said, if I don't bring my mug to an event, I don't get a drink. Do you know how quickly I remember now to bring my
That's
mug?
tough.
I refill my water bottles instead of throwing them away.
Well,
Yeah,
this
that-
also, it's called Clean Canteen. Is it expensive? It's $15. How much do you pay for a bottle of water that you drink and throw
$3.
away? Or maybe you recycle, what you see in the recycling? I'm not going into a big thing on bottled water, because there's a YouTube on the story of bottled water.
Oh,
But anyway, you know, the leaching and all kinds of stuff, and the plastic and the oil and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But it's an investment. You can get them at the, well, I don't know, I know you can get them at the Canton store there, the whatever. But it seems like a big investment. But you have it forever.
What's it called?
You have it, it's $15.
No, what's it called?
What?
What is it
Metal,
called?
it's a metal bottle.
It's stainless steel.
No, but what did you call it?
It's Clean, K-L-E-A-N, Canteen, K-A-N-T-E-E-N. I think I put an extra N and E in there. I know they have them at the nature store, but there are probably lots of other places.
Why
For
do you
me,
call it
that was
clean?
one thing that I could do. So I think of all the trash, I take it to the, when I get my coffee, some places give you it off if you bring your own mug. And I was at an airport and they said, well, we don't do that, we have to use our own mug. I said, okay, I'll go find somebody else, and I did.
yep.
I didn't get my coffee there. See, it's something simple. I'm not doing it, I'm not telling you, because I think for me, it was something I knew I could do. You find something that touches you, that you think you could. Is it hard to change habits?
Yes.
Yeah, it's the darn thing, and remembering it.
I quit using plastic bags when I go to the store, and I buy my own and I bring them. And if I forget them, I go back out to the car to give them, and the thing of groceries has to wait.
So these are little things, but they have an effect. And those 2 DVDs that are really, they're entertaining enough that you can have your families put your feet up and sit down and watch them. And the one I told you was The Story of Stuff, and that's 20 minutes. And the other one is The Story of Bottled Water. Because again, any one of these things touches almost every segment in terms of the natural world and people. It's amazing. So pick something that touches you. Doesn't matter what it is, but something that you think will actually make a difference. Does that sound like a plan? And it doesn't matter. And it'd be good to come back and share with each other. What's the one thing? That's your assignment. You didn't expect to get an assignment. You have your own assignments and about it. Patrick, what your assignment is to think of one thing and come back and share it with somebody. Okay? And it may take a long time to remember to do it, but that's okay. That's part of the self-emptying that we're called to, that Jesus was the self-emptying that brought about life. Well, I think whatever that simple kind of thing is, brings about life for other people. And I wanted to, I think one of your assignments was the Catholic Catechism here, and it was on page 450. So if you want to go back, I just thought it was very interesting because a lot of the things we talked about are right here on page 451, Stewards of Creation.
Is
The
this
Bible-
catechism for adults?
U.S. Catechism, yeah.
Is it the one you're using?
No, this, well.
We have
the
2.
other one-
We have
the other
we have
one's
that
the
one. We also
Catechism of
have
the
the other
Catholic Church.
Okay.
That's for the one I thought.
Well,
Yeah,
this
that's
one
what it
says, the
said.
Bible contains a profound message about the stewardship of material creation. God creates the world, but entrusts it to human beings. Caring for and cultivating the world involves the following: joyfully appreciation for God-given beauty and wonder. That's your other assignment.
What page is that?
Well, in this one, it's 451. It's under the 10th commandment, embracing the poverty of spirit. So to take one of those moments to look again whatever grabs your attention. Okay? So that's the first thing, is just be aware of the beauty and the awesomeness of the gift. Because the more I appreciate it, the more I will be motivated to do something. Because I love it and I care for it and I want to do it, even if it does mean self-emptying. And then it goes on to protection and preservation, but it's just a respect for life. It's a good summary of what we talked about right here in the Catechism. A couple of other things. I just want to say, if anybody wants to borrow this, I actually got it, I borrowed it, but it's called For the Next 7 Generations. I don't know if anybody has seen this. It's 13 indigenous grandmothers weaving a world that works. Are you familiar with it?
No.
It's got to be an awesome. I've heard people talk about it. I thought it was going to be able to put it in the car and listen. I think it's a
DVD.
It's a DVD. I was so disappointed. I thought, I was traveling and I thought, oh good, I'm going to be able to listen to this. And it kept saying no disc. But anyway, I know from talking to other people, and maybe you want to say something about it. I want to say that Native spirituality, for me, I told you that before, I've always had a great connectedness with indigenous people, because there's that sense of connectedness that's part of the rootingness of your tradition. And so I just learned a lot when I was at St. Regis teaching at Aquasanza, when I was teaching in the spirituality courses. I learned a lot from your Native people and people who used to come and speak. And Brad Bonaparte was one of them, and his mom is over here. Fantastic speaker. I don't know, had you heard him speak?
No.
Awesome. Awesome. So, anyway, if anybody wanted to borrow this, I'm sure you can get it back either through Sister Maureen or Deacon Patrick, but I'm sure it's powerful, very powerful. When you want to talk about the vision of the oneness and the sacredness. I think you got a flyer on the climate. This climate change ambassador is from the Catholic Climate Change, what we just saw, and he's the New York State representative, and he's the head of the heart doctor, cardiac. He is, where is it, up on the chief of cardiology at the Rochester General Hospital. So I know Watertown's quite a distance. It's on a Sunday afternoon. You're more than welcome to come. I think you'll have it. It will give you a real perspective. He's an excellent speaker, but he really, within an hour, gives you a real perspective in terms of climate change and how can we respond to it. I have some extra copies here, so if you want to take one, share it with a friend, whatever. I meant to bring one enough for everybody, but if you want to take one and share it, help yourself. What else? I got a couple of other things I want to give you. This is a little, this is from Thomas Merton, and it's a beautiful little thing, and it has to do, this might be something to meditate on as you, how about if you pass some of them out on this side, and how about if you pass them out on this side, please. Thomas Merton had a profound sense of the awesomeness and wonder of God, so it's just a nice little reflection. So that's a little reflection prayer.
Oh, that was not nice.
And here's a copy of the St. Francis Pledge. And you can go online and sign it yourself, but it tells you what it is.
That came with this tea that I got, Tulsi.
Yeah?
But it's got, it doesn't say fair trade, but the story that they talk about.
Well, there's certainly more than one organization. There's certainly other organizations that do that kind of thing, that takes into consideration the good of the whole. Did everybody get one? I don't know how far I got themselves.
We need more over here.
Do you need more? Oh, my gosh, I'm sorry. Oh, we got 2 minutes.
So that's all right, we've been here at 9 o'clock, nobody, nobody behind.
Okay, we're good.
You're good to go? Okay. Okay, anybody, anything, you have questions? Whatever you wanna say?
We miss you, come back again.
Thank you. It is a joy to be with you.
It's a good class.
It's always fun.
When are you back again?
Probably when you are commissioned.
Oh, I thought you were doing 2 of our classes.
No. But I will, well, actually, those of you who are in I will be at the workshop in Norwood. Fourth. Yeah.
Sister doing the afternoon liturgy
So,
for the late liturgical
thank
people.
you, and God bless, and I look forward to seeing you again. And I have marked on my calendar when you're commissioning this.
Yep, June
It's very
28th.
exciting. It's certainly been a privilege to be with you, and I mean that, every single one of you.
Thank you.
Thanks, sister.
So, for you. And your perseverance. You're still here after 2 years.
Yeah, I know.
Thank you. God bless.